Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, Bookalicious. It's finally time for my July reading wrap-up video. I read so much fun books in July. I read 11 books in total, which is kind of like my average amount of books that I can typically get to in a month. And I'm just so excited to talk about all of these books with you guys and share all of my ratings and just share all of my opinions about these books. So let's get right into the video. We started off with a bang. I read Gleam, which is book free in the Plated Prisoner series, which I have talked about a lot on this channel. I am obsessed with this series. It's just my new obsession of the year. I love the characters and the romance so much, and this book is officially my favorite book of 2024 so far. This was a 6-star read for me, and it was just so perfect. Each book is such a perfect continuation from the ending of each book, and the character development and the character growth and the relationships in this series just keep getting better and better. And these characters, I would die for them. They mean everything to me. The romance means everything to me. The love interest in this series, he is just so amazing. Like, I just don't even have enough words to say how awesome this series is. Book one is Guild, and it is basically following the story of this young woman named Orin who is golden touched, and what that means is that her entire body is golden. Everything about her is gold, and she became this way through the king named King Midas, who has golden magic, and so he has made her golden. And you're basically just following her journey as she navigates the palace, and she is going through a lot of different adventures. I know I'm not giving a good summary, but it's great if you go into this series not knowing like what to expect, because it will take you by storm. And I'm just so happy that I found this series this year, and this was just an amazing book. And the spice was spicing. The spice, I was here for it. The second book that I picked up was The Deal by Elle Kennedy, and this was one of my most anticipated books to read because everyone is always hyping Elle Kennedy up and saying that her books are amazing, and I totally agree now. This was so good. I gave this 4.75 stars. It was very close to being 5 stars for me. I'm just not obsessed with the romance in this book, but I still love the romance and the couple so much, and I had such a good time with this book. I will say that you should totally look up some trigger warnings, because there are some heavy subject matters in this book that are discussed. And I really liked the way that the subject was talked about and the way that the topic was handled. And I really enjoyed that extra layer of emotion for the main characters. I really loved this couple, Hannah and Garrett. I love how opposite they were, and I love how they didn't like each other initially. Actually, I feel like she didn't like him initially that much. I feel like she disliked him because she just assumed that he was just this typical jock, and eventually once they got to spend more time together, she got to see a different side to him that she fell in love with, and he was just amazing. He was so sweet and considerate and funny, and I just loved their dynamic. And he also had things that he was struggling with as well that she was able to help him with, and I loved their little tutoring sessions. I thought those were very lovely, and this book was just so much fun. I cannot wait to start book 2 because I think it's going to follow one of his friends. I think all the other books in the series are following his friends or members on the hockey team, so I can't wait to see what's next. Then I decided to read The Housemaid Is Watching by Frida McFadden. This is book free, and I believe it is the final installment in the Housemaid series, which I've been a fan of for like a while now. Like since late last year, I was obsessed with book 1 and book 2, both 5-star reads for me. I loved those books so much, and I was so excited for this book because I found out that there was going to be a big time jump with Millie and that she was going to be in a very different stage of life in this book. And this was okay. I mean, obviously, 4 stars is a very good rating, but at the same time, I was expecting to rate this book higher, and I got very nervous when I started seeing a lot of people on Goodreads and Bookstagram really not liking this book. But I was like, you know what? I'm gonna love it. And I did enjoy it. It was entertaining. All of Frida McFadden's books are so entertaining and fast paced and short chapters and are just so easy to binge read, and they keep you hooked because you want to know what the big plot twist is going to be. But this was a little bit lackluster for me. It was a little bit tedious in some areas, and the writing style felt very just basic. It felt very copy and paste. Like it felt very similar to just a lot of her other books. Like even certain sentences just kept popping up, and I was just not loving it because I was just like, where's the originality of this series? This feels like I'm reading a sentence that she took out of The Inmate and put in this book. And I really didn't like the main character in this book, which broke my heart because I loved Millie in book 1 and book 2, but in this book she was just so naive and just, in my opinion, she was not being a good mother. She was second guessing everything that someone was telling her, someone that she should know she can trust, and she was just so annoying in this book. I really didn't like her in this book, and it was just a little bit of a letdown, but still a 4-star rating because it was entertaining, and the plot twist did catch me a little bit off guard, and I do enjoy the other 2 books in the series, but this one, like, I wish we could have had a better ending. I really do. Moving on to one of my favorite books of the month is Survive the Night by Riley Sager. This is basically about a young woman. Have I been doing synopsis summaries for each of these books? I don't think I have, but I'm gonna give one for this because the premise is so good. It's about this young woman. She goes to this college. She's recently lost her friend. Her friend was recently killed by this serial killer who's been known to be killing a lot of young women on this campus. And our main character is trying to get home for school break, and she ends up going in this ride share with this stranger, this guy who she doesn't know anything about, but he's going the same way as she is, so she decides to get a ride with him. And as the ride progresses, she starts to get very suspicious of him because he's acting really creepy, and as the ride goes on, she starts to suspect that he could be the campus killer, that he may have killed her best friend, and she needs to get away from him as fast as possible. This book was just amazing. It felt like watching a really intense, like, horror thriller movie. It was just so good, so fast paced. I loved the writing style, and something about Riley Sager that is just amazing is that he cares about writing an amazing plot, but he also cares about giving such depth to his characters. Like, his characters feel so fleshed out. They don't feel just like basic characters put into this big plot. Like, he thinks about everything, and there's just so many good little plot twists and connections, and his books would be really fun to reread because once you know the plot twists, then if you reread the book, you'll be able to put together all of the little Easter eggs that he's sprinkled throughout the book. And I just had so much fun with this. It was an easy 5-star read for me, one of my new favorite thrillers of the year. It was just amazing. I couldn't recommend this book enough to you guys. Then I decided to read a fun romance. I picked up Brutal Prince by Sophie Lark. This is my first ever Sophie Lark book. And before I get into the book, I just want to say I love that she has pictures in her books. I didn't expect to get any pictures because I was reading this on my Kindle app, but I was so pleasantly surprised with the artwork. in this book with all of the different fun scenes that were being portrayed, and that was just a really fun surprise, and I just really love that, and I think more books should do that, especially fantasy books. I would love that. But this was very out of my comfort zone because I've never read like a mafia romance before. This isn't even like a super dark romance compared to one of the books I read this month. This book is basically like a fluffy romance compared to one of the other books I read this month. But this was out of my comfort zone because, again, it was a mafia romance, but then it had some tropes that I really love: enemies to lovers, arranged marriage. I love that combination so much, and I had a really good time with this book. I loved the dual POVs. I loved Ada and Callum and their slow burn of a relationship. I mean, it wasn't super duper slow burn, but they definitely did hate each other, and then it progressed to seeing them really respect each other and then care for each other and fall in love. I will say that I wish we had more emotional romantic moments because it was very, very physical, their relationship, which was fine. But I wish we would have gotten to see a better balance of the emotional side plus the physical side, which was my reason for not rating this book higher. But obviously 4.25 is still a very amazing rating, and this was a very, very fun book, and I really enjoyed it, and I'm definitely going to be continuing with this series. I'm not in any hurry to start book 2, but I'm so excited to see what happens with the other characters and with the plot as well. I really liked that this was a romance that had like a very good subplot happening with like the criminals and the mafia. That was really fun to read about. So very excited to see what's going to happen in book 2. Then I picked up Nightbane. This is the sequel to Lightlark, a book that I absolutely loved last year. I gave it 5 stars. This was a very fun sequel. It was not as good as Lightlark to me personally, but it was still super fun. It has a very interesting now and then timeline, which I typically do enjoy in books. And this is a love triangle. I can't talk about it too much because I would obviously give away a lot that happens, but there is a love triangle, and I'm conflicted because before going into this book, I was so certain that I wanted our main character to end up with one person, and now I don't know who I want her to end up with. I don't know. I feel like she can't pick wrong. I feel like both options are pretty great. Also, Alex Astor is apparently coming out with an adult rom-com that's enemies to lovers, which has nothing to do with what we're talking about here, but I'm very excited for that book to come out. I just want to throw that out there. I'm very, very excited to get my hands on that book. But this was a very fun, action-packed sequel. I really enjoyed the side characters, and there are so much different fantasy politics happening in this book as well, which is always fun to read about. I love fantasy politics, and this was a fun sequel, and I totally recommend that you try out Lightlark because Lightlark is so much fun. Then I decided to read Check and Mate by Miss Ali Hazelwood. I have not read an Ali Hazelwood book since The Love Hypothesis, so I didn't know what to expect. I kind of forgot her entire writing style, and I decided to pick this cute little rom-com up for a 24-hour readathon because I love reading YA romance books for 24-hour readathons because they're super easy to binge and read and get through, and I read this in a day. I read this in like 5 hours, so it was very fun to binge read. I gave this 3 stars. I know that this is not people's favorite Ali Hazelwood book. I feel like a lot of people love The Love Hypothesis or Love Theoretically. I know this one and her recent book, Not in Love, are like people's least favorite books by her. So I totally took that into consideration. This wasn't a bad book. This isn't a bad 3-star rating. This is just one of those books that I will never think about again. Like, unless I have to talk about it, I will never think about this book again. It was very forgettable to me. The romance was very non-existent. I mean, it was there, but it wasn't at the same time. Like, it felt like it took so long, and I love a good slow burn, but at the same time, I feel like the love interest, Nolan, should have been in the book way more than what he was. I didn't even need him to have his own POV. I just needed him to show up more than what he did. And I feel like this isn't necessarily like a YA rom-com. I feel like this is more like a YA contemporary coming of age book instead. I know that there was a lot of controversy about whether this should be labeled as YA, and after reading it, I think it can be. I think there's different stages of YA. I would never let a 12-year-old or like a 13-year-old or 14-year-old read this book, but I feel like 16 and up can read it. There's no spice in this book, but it's definitely talked about, and sexualities and sex positivity is talked about a lot, which is great, but I feel like those are topics that are better for like a 16-year-old to read versus like a 13-year-old. There are different levels of being a young adult reader, but this book was okay. It was pretty bland. I wasn't obsessed with the main character, Mallory. I liked her, but I wasn't obsessed with her character. I wasn't obsessed with the romance, but I did love Nolan a lot. I think he was a cutie, and her sisters were dreadful. I'm sorry, but her sisters, Sabrina and Darcy, they were dreadful. They were so selfish and unlikable. They were awful. I think there was another side character that I liked. His name was Oz. He was great, but yeah, it's just a book, you know? It's not something that I'm gonna think about, but it was okay. It got the job done, and it was fun to binge read, but it was nothing special, so I wouldn't go out of my way to recommend this to you. The next book I read was Haunting Adeline. This is the book that I was referring to when I was talking about Brutal Prince. And I was basically saying that this book makes Brutal Prince look like a fluffy little rom-com. This book is insane. I just want to say that. And please look up the content and trigger warnings, because this book is chock full of so many different trigger warnings for the plot and the romance. This is the darkest romance, if you even want to call it that I've read in my entire life. I know I might be exaggerating with the spice level, but I don't think I am. Like, this book was the spiciest thing I've ever read in my entire life, and I just want to say I hated the spice scenes. I hated them. I skimmed them, and they didn't do anything for me at all. But this book is crazy. So it basically follows this young woman named Adeline, and she is living in this mansion that I believe was previously her grandmother's, and she suspects that it could be haunted potentially, and she's also trying to figure out this mystery of trying to figure out who could have killed her great grandmother, I believe. And while all of this is going on, she crosses paths with this guy named Zaid Meadows, who has been randomly stalking her after he saw her picture for like a book signing event, because she writes books, and they become intertwined in each other's lives. Zaid is what would I even call him? He catches predators, so he saves young children and women and people who are in trouble with human trafficking. He basically rescues the victims, and I love the work that he does. I want to say that. I would work for him. I would cover surveillance cameras. I would do whatever he needs. I love his job. Like, reading about him unaliving these horrible people, I was here for that. I really was. I love him as, you know, what he brings to society, him saving the lives of innocent people. I love that so much. Him as a romantic hero, not so much. He's not a romantic hero at all, but like, he is so hypocritical, because some of the things that he did to Adeline was just not okay. He's the type of guy who will basically have the mindset of thinking like, okay, she may have said no, but I knew that she wanted me to do this to her anyway. That's how he thinks about things, and he knows that he's being hypocritical, but he doesn't care. And I know a lot of other people just love this book so much and, are going to say that this is a dark romance. And I completely understand. And I totally get why this has such a big fan base and why so many readers do love this type of book. Because at the end of the day, it is fiction. If this was a real woman talking about her relationship with a guy, then I would be mortified for her. But this is fiction and it is dark romance. So it's allowed to, have situations happen in this that would not be okay in real life, I suppose. But it was still very, difficult for me to get on board with this book. Now, I did give it 4 stars because it was so entertaining. This is one of the most entertaining books I've read in my entire life because, yes, I was not here for the romance between Zaid and Adeline. I think that they are both, I just don't think it's a good relationship. Like dating your stalker and the things that he would say and do to her, no. But the plot and him trying to catch these criminals, I loved that so much. I also loved seeing Adeline try to figure out the mystery in her family and who could have killed her great-grandmother. That was really interesting. So I really loved the plot line of that. But the romance was not my favorite thing ever. I mean, they had some good moments, but a lot of it was just, obviously, a lot of it was just super sexual, which is never like my favorite thing. Like, I'm all here for spice if there's a balance of spice and emotion, and there was no good emotional balance. Like, Zaid only started stalking her because he liked the way she looked. There was nothing initially about her personality that made him intrigued about her. And this was just one of the most wild, crazy books I've read in my entire life. But if you like dark romance and you like unique, unconventional romance books and dark MMCs, then I would recommend that you read this book. But if you do not like dark romance, then steer clear of this book, please. Switching gears to a book that could not be more different than Haunting Adeline, I read This Time It's Real by Anne Liang. If you have seen some of my previous reading wrap-ups, then you would know that I read her other YA rom-com book, I Hope This Doesn't Find You, and I loved that book so much. I loved her writing style, and after I read that book, I went and immediately purchased this book, and this was so, so good. One of my favorite books of the month. So close to being 5 stars. So close. But it just didn't give me those 5-star sparks that the other book gave me. But this was still such a strong 4.75 book for me. I absolutely loved it. And it basically follows our main character named Eliza, and she's always had a talent with writing, and she wrote this essay about her finding the love of her life, even though she's never really been in a relationship, she's never had a boyfriend, she does not have the love of her life, but her essay goes viral, and so to keep up the image, she needs to hire someone to pretend to be her boyfriend, and she needs to make sure that this person can pretend that they are madly in love with her. And she decides to seek out the help of this guy named Kaz, who is a super popular actor, and he goes to her school, and so they decide to make a deal where he will pretend to be her boyfriend, and then she will also tutor him and help him with his school assignments. And I just love that trope so much. I mean, fake dating is one of the best tropes ever. Enemies to lovers is my favorite trope, but fake dating is a close second. And with this trope, I love that they both, had to strike a deal to get what they wanted, where he would pretend to be her boyfriend and then she would help him out with his school studies. And then they were just going on so much fun fake dates as well, and going to these restaurants and food places, and she would visit him on set while he was filming one of his TV shows. This book was just so wholesome. I loved the little love confession scene as well. I think he was just amazing, and I loved the main character. The writing style was just so much fun. I absolutely love this author, and I love the way that she puts together a rom-com. I cannot recommend this book enough to all of you. I think all of you are going to love this book and her other book. I hope this doesn't find you as well. She is amazing. Next up, I read Powerful by Lauren Roberts. This is the novella to Powerless, and this follows Adina's POV while Peyton was doing the trials in Powerless. And I have a confession to make. I really dislike Powerless. I gave it 2.75 stars, and I was just not understanding the hype about that book. It's so hyped everywhere, and I just didn't understand, and I just did not like that book at all. Now this book, I don't know if it was because it was shorter or if it was because it had some tropes in this book that I preferred versus Powerless, which felt very insta-lovey to me. This book has the grumpy sunshine dynamic, and it is done so well, and I love how fast-paced it was. I mean, obviously it's a novella, so it's super duper short, and I just had a blast with this book. I finished it in like under 2 hours, and it was just super duper fun, very emotional as well near the ending, even though I knew what to expect at the end, but it was still really sad. I may have shed a tear. My tears ricochet, okay? But it was a really powerful, hence the title, but it was a very powerful novella. It really was. And I gave it 4.25 stars. And now that I've enjoyed the novella so much, I have decided to read Reckless, which I wasn't planning on reading Reckless, but I made a deal with myself. I was like, if I like this novella, then I'm gonna read Reckless. And since I enjoyed this novella so much, and I'm very interested to see what happens next right now, I'm going to read Reckless. So I don't know when I'm gonna read Reckless. Not this month. Probably in the fall or winter time, once the hype has died down a little bit. But keep an eye out for my Reckless review. The last book I picked up in July was The Summer of Broken Rules by K.L. Walther, and I know that a lot of people don't love this author's books. I haven't seen rave reviews for their other books, but I know that a lot of people really enjoy this book. So I was very excited to read it, especially since it's the perfect book to read in the summertime. It was a very fun romance. I gave it 4.5 stars, and it basically follows our main character named Meredith, who has recently experienced death in the family. Her sister, who she loved very much, has passed away, and this summer she is getting ready to attend one of her cousin's big weddings, and during the wedding they're playing this game of Assassin, which I will say I was shocked at how seriously they took this game, especially the main character. She took this game so seriously, which I understand because she was trying to win for her sister who really loved the game. But my goodness, this game was taken so seriously, and she basically has a cute little summer romance with this guy named Wit, and I really enjoyed their romance. I was hesitant about their romance at first because there's no real tropes in this book. There's no fake dating, there's no dislike to love or enemies to lovers or even friends to lovers. The relationship between them, it's not insta love, but it's insta like they instantly connect and like each other, and then start spending time together, and then their relationship just kind of blossomed over the duration of the story. And at first I was hesitant. At first I was like, I don't know if I like this, but then I really started to like it, and it was super wholesome, and I kind of enjoyed the type of relationship that they had, where there wasn't any tropes in their relationship, and it was just this super cute, breezy, fun summer relationship, which was very fun to read about. I think the writing style was very good, and just easy to get into, and I really enjoyed this story. I don't know if I'm going to read any more books by this author because, again, a lot of other people don't love her other books. A lot of people really just talk about this book when they talk about this author, so I don't know. But I will say that I really enjoyed this book, and it's been on my TBR for a while. Like, I've really wanted to read this for a long time, so I'm very happy that I finally read it. And I would definitely recommend that you read this before the summer's out, because this book has the most perfect summer vibes ever. I love you guys with my whole heart. Thank you so much for clicking and watching this video. It means so much to me. And I hope you guys enjoyed seeing my little monthly reading recap. Let me know what your favorite book was in July, or your least favorite book in July as well. Let me know what other videos you want to see from me. And I will be trying to get a 24-hour readathon video up very soon. And I will also be trying to post a video sharing some of the books that I would like to read in August, because I do not have a strict TBR for August, but there are, of course, some books that I really do want to get around to reading in August. So I would love to share those with you guys. But I will see you all in another video very soon, and happy reading to all of you, and I love you so much.